Welcome to Morrison Madness.
I'm LaShelle.
I'm Don.
Before we get started, because we always forget to say this and it's like a last minute thing, make sure you're following us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Check out all the things that we're doing. We also have a Facebook group, which then we have a little bit more interaction with you. And so make sure you're checking that out as well. You can get to that from our Facebook page. But yeah.
Here's a word from our legal department. If you are easily offended, do not join the Morrison Madness group. Sometimes the things that Don's posts are not appropriate.
Did you offend somebody and I miss it?
No.
Oh, okay. I was going to say most of the people
It's just
on
bound
there,
to happen.
Well, that's true. Or you'll start bombing.
I don't have a filter.
Epstein
memes.
I can't talk tonight. Epstein memes. Why is that so hard to say?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Epstein memes? That's not hard to say.
Sure. What you said. So, what are we talking about tonight?
Well, before we get too far, because I meant to mention this in the last one, and I forgot.
Okay.
So if you watch us on YouTube, or if you've heard us comment about it, I wear a Star Wars t-shirt, a different Star Wars t-shirt for every single episode.
That's true. And you didn't have a Star Wars shirt on last time.
No. And people have asked.
Right.
And even out at shows, I wear a different Star Wars t-shirt. And people are like, how many of those do you have? I have quite a few.
We have an entire podcast about not an entire podcast, but we talk about it in the wardrobe episode.
I have a lot of Star Wars.
That was supposed to be about how you pick out my clothes, but it became a lot about your Star Wars shirts too, which was good.
I was going to get a new shirt for Star Wars Day.
Yeah.
And then they were all so expensive and I couldn't find one that I wanted.
Yeah, there wasn't designs that you were like, oh, no.
And there weren't. I thought there would be a sale since it was Star Wars Day. Anyway, back to the last two shirts. Gary Allan, after 8 years.
Yeah.
Gary Allan's going to release a new studio album. Should come out right around the same time as this podcast.
Okay.
I can't wait. I'm so excited.
Awesome.
He's released a few singles over the last 8 years.
Categories around that, aren't you?
I don't.
Every single song, there's going to be a Name That Tune category for it somehow.
If you've been to our Name That Tune, I do like some Gary Allan.
That's right. It's always funny to me when there's a group that knows us but doesn't necessarily know the songs, and if they're especially like there's certain groups that just don't know country, and it doesn't matter what the country song is. It could be a female singing, and they write down Gary Allan because they're just like, one of these has got to be Gary Allan in this group.
He has a lot of hits. It's easy to put him into a category.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that's my little plug for Gary Allan. Hope the album sales blow up for him. Hope they go through the roof. I'm sure it'll be a great album.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be.
He's never put out a bad album.
Right.
So our last podcast,
parenting.
we were talking about parenting.
Yeah.
And then I thought that we would follow that up with how I was a parent.
You were a parent when we got married.
I was a single parent.
Yeah, well, which was good since we got married. Because if you weren't a single parent and we got married, that might be a problem in Iowa.
Yes, but I mean, sometimes people already.
Oh yeah, you had little kids. You had kids still at home. You mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and it's not like we were an item when I was going through a divorce. I mean, I was single. I had been single for a long time.
Yes.
I was a single parent raising my kids on my own.
And you had primary custody of them.
They still, went and saw their mom and stuff like that. But, I mean, the majority of...
More than 50% of the time they were with you. You had primary custody of all of your kids.
Well, of the boys, of the two younger boys, I had 50-50 custody of Grace.
Right.
So, that changed later on. I mean, as the boys got older.
Yes.
Yeah. Their mom and I sat down and had a discussion and went to 50-50. She got married and, happy life. And so, but being around kids, babysitting kids, not the same as parenting.
No.
And so, me having been a parent with one person, being a single parent, having been a parent with another person, being a single parent, and being a single parent for quite a bit before you and I got married.
Right.
You played an active role a lot in the kids' life when we were dating.
Yeah.
Because again, the kids were with me so much of the time.
Right.
It would be hard for you not to.
Right.
But that's different than living with them
Yes.
full time
Yes.
when they're here.
Yes.
What's the little saying that you like to say?
Add water, Instamom. Yes.
At marriage, Instamom.
It was. Yeah. Yeah, it was crazy. And I think it was even more so because there was 3 of them. It wasn't just 1 or even 2, because with 3 they like to gang up on each other and then they want you to like mediate. When there's 2, there's 2 sides. When there's 3, it's like weighted sides, and then that's not fair.
And you just play goalie, right? You just kick them back into this middle and say, sort it out.
Right. And I was like, I'm not getting in the middle of that. Yeah, or they would literally have 3 sides. It was crazy. And I think they knew that they could do that, and so that was their tactic from the get-go kind of idea. Before we were married, that's when if I ever helped out, taking care of them because you needed to work or something on a weekend that you were supposed to have them. And then, yeah.
It's hard being a single parent. I don't care if you're a
Yes.
male or female. And especially if you have gone through a divorce. I mean, I can't try to imagine what it's like if you've lost a spouse and you're
Right.
trying to raise kids on your own. But when you've gone through a divorce, you have that lingering fear that the other parent will come and try and take them away,
Right.
or the kid will, at some point and I feel like they all try to do this, try to pit you against the other parent.
Yeah.
And then,
But kids even that are not from a divorced family try and do that.
yes, but
mean,
it's easier when they're,
Yeah, it's much more difficult for the child to successfully pit one parent against the other when the parents are married.
and so at some point after my first divorce, I joined a single parents group online that was a social network to help people with issues. And for a long time, I thought I was the only parent that had all of this guilt about, the fact that I, had made my kids be in this single parent households.
Right.
And I come to find out that a lot of parents have that guilt. And so then they tend to do things that they never intended on doing, being too soft about certain things,
Right.
or they might overbuy things for their kids, or
Yep.
ignore certain things.
Yep. The reason that they're acting out is because they're frustrated. So I'm not going to yell at them because they're acting
Right.
out, or I'm not going to discipline them for acting out because they're frustrated because we split up.
Right.
Their
And
parents
so
split up. Yeah.
all of those things being said, about me being a single parent, I mean, I think my kids had, a lot of love. I don't think they ever lacked for anything, even when it was hard. I think we had great times together. I get along with all my kids. And then, to go from all of that is way different than,
Yeah.
boom, now I'm a mom. I'm a
Yes.
mom to these 3 kids.
Yes. And to kids that you don't necessarily have a full say over.
Right.
Being a step parent is a whole nother thing, I think. I mean, I don't have a biological child of my own that I have raised on my own. The closest I come to was what Kaylee was, which was my dog that passed away a couple years ago. But even with that, I mean, knowing that I had Kaylee for so many years, and then I'm sharing Kaylee with you and with the kids, and there were things that there were times where I'm like, no, I'm the parent of that dog. You don't get to say what they,
Right.
And then I'm like, and this is a dog, folks. Like, I can't imagine the same feeling that you had as far as if I disciplined them, that you're like, you don't get to discipline them. Those are not your kids kind of feeling potentially.
I never had that because we had discussed that
Correct.
ahead of time. But
Correct.
there were ways that you
The way I
punish
would
the kids
discipline or
that
what
sometimes I didn't disagree with.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then, but at the same time, as a
But
step parent,
vice versa. Sorry to interrupt you. Vice versa. There were ways that I would punish the children that you and clearly, I mean, after pointing it out to me, I would let little things go, like them not picking up the Legos. I would let it go, for 3-4 weeks in a row, and then I would blow up and threaten to throw their Legos away.
right, which wasn't helpful.
Right.
The thing that was the most difficult was more because of your ADD. The kids figured out that on the weekend that they were with us, and then they would go back to their moms on Monday for the next week, they could do anything and everything that they wanted.
Especially on Sundays.
Yes, because they would get grounded, but that grounding was only going to last until they went to school the next morning, because by the time they came back a week later, you wouldn't remember that they had been grounded.
Right.
And then it would be fine. And then they figured out...
In my mind, they'd been grounded for a week. They got stuck staying at their mom's. That's punishment. Poor kids.
But especially the boys, because they were already old enough when I kind of came into the picture. When we met and started dating, Grace was 5, and when we got married, I feel like Grace was 9. So she turned 9 right after we got married, or something along those lines. So she was still fairly young, where the boys were already older. Dolan was 8 when I met him. Devin was, what did that make him? 11 or 12 kind of idea. And so by that age, they've already figured those things out. Grace was starting to, and I think the boys were helping her figure out, you can do whatever you want on Sunday because Dad won't remember. Like, they knew, and they played it.
Hey, dads figure that stuff out too. On Sundays when Grace would ask me, Dad, can I have a Mountain Dew? Absolutely.
I remember doing
your mom's picking you up at 8 o'clock, honey. Make sure it's gone by then.
Chug this. But no, so they would play on that, and then I had the memory, and so then they would come back, and they would be like, can we go do this? And you're like, sure. And I'm like, no, they're grounded. You grounded them last time. And you were like, oh yeah, no, you're grounded. You can't do that. Oh, they got so mad at me.
Yes, that made you the evil stepmom.
I was the evil stepmom because I would remember that they were grounded, and yeah, that was not a good thing. So that's kind of, and again, I wasn't the one doing the grounding. I just had the memory. So that was a sticking point. But again,
it's not a position that I envied.
No, and we tried doing the whole sit at the table and discuss how something went wrong, and none of you could sit through it.
No.
Not just the kids. You couldn't do it either. And
no.
So then it was just futile. It didn't make sense.
And it's not because I wasn't raised that way. It's because of the ADD. I mean, I have a hard time sitting through a 3-hour lecture.
Well, and that's the whole other ball wax. I mean, because it wasn't just here, join this family that's already here, 3 kids, a husband, and all the crazy that goes with that. All of you have ADD. And I think we've talked about this before, that it's overwhelming to get tossed into that. It's like a whole nother culture kind of feeling.
Yes, we would have 6 conversations going on at the dinner table, and you're like,
shut up.
Yeah.
I remember even bringing in like a talking stick. I think we used like a koosh ball or something, because I was like,
I
cannot deal with this. And one dinner I was like, no, one person is talking at a time. If you're not holding this, you're not talking, because I can't take it today.
I remember that. I think that thing lasted about a month, and then we were just like,
I don't think it even lasted that long. But I think part of them started to realize that I wasn't doing it because I was being mean. It was because I couldn't keep up, and it stressed me out, and I felt like I was I felt like not that I wasn't involved, but that I wasn't being a good parent, because I couldn't catch all of the little things that had happened, that they were trying to tell you about their day, because they were all telling you at once. And I'm a sign language interpreter. I'm used to hearing one thing and saying another at the same time and processing 2 different sentences at the same time. I can't do 4 and then 6 conversations on top of it. I can't. That's too much. And so...
And what's weird is I struggled with in sign language.
Yes.
Right? But that to me is not a big deal.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, you made this comment the other day. You asked me a question, or you made some comment about something, and because I was in the middle of something, I heard it, and it's rattling around in the back of my brain. And then when I finished, I answered you, and you're like,
that was 10 minutes ago. Thanks for that answer. I needed it 10 minutes ago when I asked 10 minutes ago. Yes. And I said it reminds me of the episode in Gilmore Girls where they try and talk to Suki's husband right when he wakes up. And then he remembers it 2 days later that he was talking about something. So yeah, because it really does. And you have that consistently. There's always a delayed reaction if you're doing anything. But it's funny because I have purposely delayed reaction or response to you, which kills me, by the way, because if somebody asks me a question, I want to be able to answer them. And I'll even be like, I don't know, I need to think about that as a response if I need to think about it. Like, I don't just not respond. And I have purposely not responded to you, and it drives you crazy when I don't respond to you. You're like, did you hear me? Do I need to ask again? No, you don't need to ask again. I'm just doing to you what you do to me. So now we're getting off topic, but
so while I we had struggles with the kids, with all 3 of them.
That's mild. Yeah, that's a mild way of saying it.
But I don't think that it is. I think I think, and we would have to have other parents on and discuss
Maybe
with them.
we should have some other parents on. I have a feeling that
I think part of the issue is that you just don't have that experience
No.
to realize that while, yes, we had struggles with my kids, I don't think that they were worse than what other families go through, especially if they're step families.
oh, and that could be.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, my parents are still married. Most of my friends, well, not even most of my friends. A lot of my friends had parents that were divorced, but one parent was far away. So they primarily lived with one parent. They didn't go back and forth half the time, every other week kind of feeling. So that was different. But I don't think I was a normal child growing up as far as pushing boundaries, getting in trouble.
No, I don't think so either.
I didn't do half of what most kids did to push boundaries and get in trouble. I just didn't.
Right.
I didn't have a desire to.
I didn't have a desire to. It just happened. I think that the struggles that we had, I think they're pretty normal. And I think if you watch sitcoms with mixed families or step families, however you want to say it, blended families, whatever the
Sure.
term is nowadays,
I was more like Rory.
I think you see a lot of that in them. And I realize stuff on TV is a little bit exaggerated,
Usually, yes.
to try and be funny or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think that it was out of the norm. And while there were times when my kids, acted like or maybe even said, that they hated you, I don't think that that's the case.
I hope not.
I think they all love you. I mean, when Grace was little, you two were inseparable. She spent more time.
She was my little koala bear.
Yeah, she spent more time snuggling with you than she did
Yes.
me.
Yeah.
And I think they all respect you, for different reasons than what they respect me. They may still not fully see you as a parent, and that might not be something that ever changes, but maybe as they get older and they look back, maybe when they have kids of their own.
They might. I did. I mean, I like you said, I like to research. You've made that comment before, and I say that I don't like research, but I don't like writing about research. I don't mind doing research on something that I want to learn about. I like to learn. And so I did. I went out to, forums and things that way and read stuff about step parenting. And there's theories of, a step parent should be included just like any other parent. And there just needs to be discussions between parents like you and me. So we're on the same page as far as discipline, which we did. But then there's other theories of thought that a step parent is never actually a parent. They should never discipline. They should, they're just there to make sure the child doesn't kill themselves in some foreign way.
And I think that's all dependent on the other parent, the parent that's not in the home.
Could be.
There's a difference between Grace's mom and the boys' mom.
Yes.
And part of that is that Grace's mom is a single parent, whether she was in relationships or not. She was, not married, where the boys' mom has been married to the same person for a long time.
Right.
So then there's another step parent in the house. So you're going to see two different, between Grace. Not only is Grace a girl and the other two were boys, but the parenting's, that they have at the other home is different. And so that's going to be a difference.
Well, and it affects the child. I mean, we always could tell what the rules were at their mom's house.
Yeah, and that's the other thing.
Because then they would come home and then they would have those rules. So like the boys, their rule there is when you're done eating, you rinse off your plate and you put it in the dishwasher. And here, because you like to do the dishes and fill the dishwasher in a specific way, it was always just leave your plate on the table. And that drove Dolan crazy.
Yes.
Devin was like, yeah, great, I don't have to do dishes. Dolan was like, no, can I please just rinse off my dish and put it in the dishwasher?
He doesn't even ask me now, he just does it.
He just does it, yes, which is fine, But and that's a middle, like tiny example. There's bigger things too that just in general, the way they talk, the way they behave, all of that was affected, and it was every other week having to go through that adjustment again. And for them, it was every week they're having to go through that adjustment.
Yeah.
But where I was heading, as far as researching the different theories of being a step parent, I can't be a non-involved parent.
Right. And
It's
I
just not
I didn't want you to be.
Of my genetics. Like, I wanted to be part of going to school, talking with the teachers, being involved with their co-curriculars, whether it was their sports, which I know nothing about, so I would be a cheerleader in the stands kind of thing, or if it was something else that they did know something about, like when Grace wanted to do Girl Scouts, and there was a friend of mine that was like, I will create a Girl Scout troop, and you can
Right.
be a leader with me. And I
Well,
was like, rock on.
And even when we were having some difficulties, and we had a discussion, and you weren't happy about it, but we had a discussion,
Right.
and we decided, okay, you're not going to do any parenting. I'm going to do all of the parenting.
Right.
Then the kids were still like, you're only saying that because LaShelle told you to. I'm like, LaShelle isn't even here.
I'm not even in the house.
Yeah, so that didn't work.
Right.
You know.
But I think that goes back to they still remember me remembering that they would be grounded. And so then it was because we had discussed the rules, then I was reminding you as to what the rules were. And they knew that you can't remember on your own kind of thing. And so then that's where that comes from, I think. I don't know for
I
sure.
can learn memories.
You can learn memories.
Yeah, I mean, I do. But again, I think it's a difficult situation for everybody.
Yeah.
It's difficult for the kids, like you said. They're going back and forth, having to deal with different rules because they
Yes.
are slightly different.
And then they had the third set of rules at school.
Right. And then, it's hard for us. I mean, it's,
Right.
I feel bad for you because it was hard for you. I can tell you it was hard for me. It was hard to see you struggle. It was hard to see them struggle.
Yeah.
And I always felt like I was in the middle.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I hated you ever feeling that way because that was the last thing that I ever wanted to do. Was
Well, and I
make
don't
you
think
feel
that that's-
like you had to choose between me or the kids.
And I don't think that they ever really wanted that either. And
Right.
I don't feel like that they even realized it.
No.
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 Not something that I pointed out to them.
Right.
So.
No. But yeah, I think that's a struggle that I think all blended families deal with. I think the biological parent does feel torn between their biological kids and the spouse that's a step parent, because the biological kid, if they're not getting along with the step parent, then the biological parent feels like they have to choose one side or the other.
Right.
And that's tough. That's very tough to be in. Where when it's everybody's biological in the same family, then if you choose the child's side over the other parent, there's something to discuss there, kind of thing. If you're choosing the other parent's side over the child, then that's just the adult version.
But it's got to be tough for you,
So.
a step parent, because you've come into this family, and you've. I find it hard to believe that a person could come into a family and fall in love with a person and not fall in love with their children.
Oh, I totally fell in love with your kids.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so,
yes,
you know,
I
you're
consider
not-
them mine. Like,
you're
I
not-
don't talk to them.
Punishing them because you
No.
don't like them. You're punishing them because you love them and you want them to learn.
Correct.
You want them to be safe. You want them to do better. You're concerned for their well-being.
Yeah.
It's not like you weren't ever not there for them. I mean,
No.
how many times did you have to...
Take one to the doctor's office, hospital, something
Right,
that
because
way.
I wasn't... I remember
Available.
especially, when
Dolan.
when you had to take him because of his eye.
Yeah, got
you
kicked
know.
in the head.
So
Yeah.
that was never a concern
No,
for
right.
me, and so...
Right. And helping them with homework and projects and things like that. Like, I love doing that kind of stuff with them. And I wish we would have had more time. I feel like we could go on to a whole nother podcast about how we like to do our hobbies become jobs.
Right.
And they don't like that.
No.
But that's a whole nother podcast. But so I think in some senses, like, I wish we would have had more freedom, more time. And part of that was just finances that we had, because there were things that the kids wanted to do that we just couldn't afford, that sometimes their moms could. Like, the boys' mom had a boat. So on the weekends, the boys would much rather go to their mom's house and hang out on the boat, because
Right.
at our house, we're going to be doing chores around the house, and we're going to, be going to DJ this party, and that wasn't fun for
Right.
them. And so then it's hard to see that in a certain sense. And it's hard to explain to them that we're doing this because we enjoy it and because we want to be able to provide other things for you later on, and potentially bigger things, like going on vacation like we had wanted to do or something that
Right.
way.
The more I look back, the more I truly believe the struggles that we had as parents don't have anything to do with the fact that you were a stepmom and that there was this evil stepmom, rotten children syndrome going on.
Oh,
any
yeah,
of that. I 100% think it's that the apples don't fall from a tree very far
Are you taking
in a
the
valley.
blame for your kids' behavior?
There's got to be. It's almost like looking in a mirror.
Wow. Well, we have joked about the fact that if we had gone to school together, we never would have ended
No.
up together.
We wouldn't have.
Because we would not have gotten along
No.
if we were if I had known you when we were younger, we would not have been friends.
No.
So
Probably not.
So then that means that in the future there's probably hope for your kids because
Yes.
they should turn around like you did then.
Well, like I've tried to do.
Tried to do. At least you're owning it. I
Yes.
appreciate that.
Anyway, we should, and you've been a good influence on me, and I appreciate that. So, but I feel like we need
I
to.
have that on record now.
We need to wrap up. So, thank you very much for joining us for this episode of Morrison Madness. Again, check us out on social media. If you have questions or comments, please share them with us. We love them. If you have anything that you want to hear us talk about, please let us know. We're always looking for ideas.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, sometimes it becomes a struggle to know what we're going to have a discussion about. So, but thanks for tuning in, and hopefully you'll be back next week.